Hi, everyone, and welcome to the DeFi Summit DAO panel. Today, we're going to be talking about why decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs, are essential to DeFi. So to begin with, I'm Samantha Yap. I'm the founder of YAP Global. We're a PR agency specializing in blockchain and cryptocurrency companies, and we've been working with a bunch of DAOs over the last year. So some DeFi DAOs such as Cream Finance, Harvest Finance, etc. So really excited to get into this topic. I am very excited to invite Chjango Unchained, Executive Director at DWeb Foundation and Advisor to Tenderbit. And then we have Dr. Nick Almond from Finance.Vote, and Elena, co-founder and CEO of Metis DAO. Sorry, I can't pronounce your last name, but how about we go around and each of you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do and also what you do with regards to DeFi and DAOs at the moment. Elena, do you want to go first?
Oh, for sure. Yes. My name is Elena Sinalikova. I am wearing currently two hats. I am a founder of CryptoChicks, which is the female organization. We have 56 chapters in 56 countries in our chapters and the programs all over the world. And also Metis.io, which is also known as Metis DAO. This is a platform that we are developing. I am and other 26 people in our team. We are, the idea of the project is actually to do the infrastructure for the DAOs, to manage all the collaborations, the reputation power in terms of it's not going to be only voting, but the full-blown collaborations. And also on the way, we're building our own layer 2 because we found that there's no layer 2 that's fitting our purposes right now. So we decided to build our own, and this is something that we releasing already today on June 15th.
Awesome. Thanks for that intro. Chjango, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I am Chjango Unchained, and I was previously at Cosmos, and before I was working at Cosmos, I was just a hardcore Bitcoin enthusiast, although I am not a Bitcoin maximalist like some people might think. And so now I'm currently the ED of the DWeb Foundation. It's a new foundation that was founded to push us into soft forking Web 2.0 into a fully decentralized web with the handshake naming system at the root. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm currently trying to figure out how to coordinate amongst disparate groups to push a mission forward.
Awesome. We'll have to get into that, and you would have to tell us a bit more about what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And Nick, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So, my name's Nick. I'm the founder of Finance.Vote, and I'm a sort of scientist by background. I was a physicist for a while, but spent the last 10 years in academia building sort of governance systems. And last year moved into the DeFi space to set up Finance.Vote. And we're principally kind of DeFi governance infrastructure. And we're trying to build all the we call it sort of dApps that DAOs are going to need for building social consensus, building a token economy, and solving coordination problems and things like that. So we like to think of ourselves as a kind of consensus layer for DeFi.
Awesome. So for this panel, I want to break it up into kind of 3 parts. So we're going to touch on kind of the relationship between DAOs and DeFi. And then we're going to go into DAOs in practice, how that actually, is working right now. And then, end with kind of like where we're heading. Is this really the right way forward? So let's with, what are DAOs really good for? And why is it, what's the link to DeFi? Who wants to go first?
Go on, I'll take that. I think, I think DAOs, at the moment, they're good for pooling money and deciding where it goes in a decentralized fashion. So there's essentially smart contracts that can hold a bunch of assets and then through some kind of signaling mechanism decide how they're spent. They have the potential to be everything organizations that can be. with all their complexity, which means they can be sort of generalized structures for collaboration. But at the moment, we don't quite have the tools yet to make them those things. So that at the moment, they're just good at sort of pooling money. But yeah, so I think they're kind of limited in scope of what they can be. I don't think they're really DAOs yet because there's not that much autonomous about them. But at the moment, they're decentralized structures that could be almost anything, kind of like a blank canvas that need a lot of work to develop.
Right. I mean, in a sense, they're kind of it's a way for people to pool money, and it just means that the community is kind of maybe spread, or maybe more decentralized, or maybe spread globally, but it still kind of needs some like a few core coordinators to kind of get it working, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Elena, what do you think?
As of now, probably just the voting mechanism, that's what it's working, right? So, and this is the simple vote where the money goes. But DAOs is more complex than that. It's the whole collaborations between the members and organizers, and also to build the reputation power. So everything that DAO members are doing have to be recorded, and therefore, their reputation power can go up or down. And reviews, like let's say, like if we have reputation power compared to reviews, they cannot be bought. So they just what you see, that's what you get. And on blockchain, it's actually very easy to implement, right? Because we are in the open network there. So therefore, my understanding, this what the DAO should like the full-blown collaborations between the members, and the whole decentralization will be working because of this reputation power, because we can see what each member is doing, and then we can also reward all the members all in once, or so this can be like self-sustainable system and member managed organization.
Mm-hmm.
I think with the current structure of DAOs right now, with coins basically at the as the central voting scheme for DAOs, it's kind of primitive, because what happens when you give people, when you don't give one person one vote, is you end up like decisions end up converging on people who have the most voting power. And that's what we've seen with a lot of protocols that have implemented governance mechanisms with this design in it. And so it was like 2018, Phil Diane wrote a paper about dark DAOs, and he basically predicted that this was going to happen. And now we're kind of trying to improve this stake-based DAO system to be more inclusive. And I think that experiment is really, really worthwhile, but we're very early stages. But at the same time, money is not necessarily, it shouldn't be at center stage for DAOs, because there's so many other things that are needed that for DAOs to solve, right? So I'll give you an example. Right now, in the Handshake ecosystem, we are trying to come to consensus around, or at least form a decision around how to manage just a Twitter handle. So and there's no money involved in that, but at the same time, it's a surprisingly complex issue, because for a project that is completely decentralized, there's a lot of people who have bought into the ideological paradigm that a project should not even be there should not even be central control over a Twitter account. And so we have to come to consent, or we have to find a governance protocol to be able to decide on how to even govern that. So that's been a challenge.
Right. So we've talked about like how DAOs are used to kind of pull money together, but also used as a kind of a governance mechanism to kind of make a decision on something, not necessarily to do with something to do with money. Sorry, Nick, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, so the point about plutocracy is a really, really important one. It's a big thing that we're trying to solve, which is how do you make this bring in the long tail of token holders? Because otherwise there's only a very small set of people who can actually control the protocol on it, and at best you kind of a slightly better multi-sig. So we're exploring a few different ways of doing that. One is quadratic voting, which is something invented by Glenn Whale and Eric Posner, which allows people to, it kind of smooths off the power that people have based on the amount of tokens they have. So it kind of gets exponentially expensive to buy votes. But the other dimension to that is that Sybil resistance becomes a big problem. So how do you stop? It all breaks if you're pseudonymous and you can just set up 1,000 accounts. So we've been experimenting with what we call decentralized identity tokens, which are like NFTs, which can aggregate voting history and reputation, and they can be used to gate governance. So we've got an NFT gated quadratic voting system, which creates a sorted list of what people care about. And I think this is a potentially really powerful tool. And it's this kind of process of how do you draw out signal from a distributed group of people, and not weight it so much that everyone's votes don't really matter apart from a handful of people in the middle. So these are the kind of building blocks of governance, if you like. I think we're right at this very early stage of finding the right tools to be able to do this in a decentralized way. And when people don't have when they're not identifiable in the conventional sense, that makes things a lot more difficult.
Right, and as you said, we are kind of still in the early stages. So before we even delve into like DAOs in practice, I mean, let's touch a little bit on kind of what the adoption barriers are to DAOs today. Sorry, that's a bit of a mouthful, but what are the barriers to entry for people?
Well, gas fees. That's the one, right? So, and then also there is you have to be blockchain savvy, right? So at least to have a wallet and understanding of that, and the concept of the private key. So this restricts a lot of people. Of course, the DeFi people, the one that already in DeFi, it's easy for them, but it prevents from the mass adoption of the industry, of course. So these are the ones. So these are the things that the ones that I can think off the top of my head. And also, of course, for any development DAOs, it makes it harder, right? Because it's you need to be a developer even to get into the basic structure. And if we're talking about development on Ethereum, let's say, you need to have be very high skilled in order to do it. And even to open your wallet and deal with the DAO, with some of them, I know people complaining when they go and just become a member of the DAO, they break their heads to do it. It's too hard. Like if you go to just the DeFi website and you are not a DeFi person, then it's good luck to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I have to admit, I'm still trying to get used to Discord. I prefer Telegram, but it's still kind of a minefield. But what about you, Nick and Chjango? Do you agree with those barriers to entry?
100%. I think gas fees have been a big problem for us doing on-chain voting. When we started, it was $5 a vote, and we built some incentive mechanisms to make that worthwhile. But then it hit up to $150, so it just makes it, not feasible. So a lot of what we're building is snapshot-based voting, slightly different trust paradigm. But I think that can really open the door to sort of mass adoption, as well as the layer 2s and so on. And the complexity it's mind-blowing. DeFi is difficult as it is. So I think we're missing the use cases that will drag in people to do this. I think we need some kind of really case study DAOs that people can think, all right, there's a space that I can go and, we've had online forums since the Web 2.0 era, places like Reddit, where there's millions of people every day talking each other. And I think we need something that sells the use case that will drag huge amounts of people in. So there is some technical considerations, but they're achievable in the short term, I think. But really what we want is use cases that make people go, I want to join a DAO. And I don't think we've quite got them yet.
We actually get quite a few requests from the startups that are trying to find the DAO structure and that they cannot in the current kind of ecosystem, right? So yeah, for example, the ones that would like to reward their members for certain deeds, right? So for certain actions, right? And then if they would like to implement automatic rewards for all of them, so not the voting. That's the thing. Voting mechanism, of course, it's one of the use cases. But yeah, so these are the collaborations that people are looking at, and the whole kind of the structure. So we have quite a few requests from the startups on that reward system. So this is the ones that probably is the most pressing as well. And also identifying kind of a community leaders, right? So the people with the top, the most active, so the ones that can be the leaders, the potential leaders, and for example, can take on a Twitter account, something like that. And this would be dynamic. So today I take on a Twitter account, tomorrow you take on a Twitter account, because our repetition power goes up or down.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that DAOs are not really good for? Because in a sense, there are some things in centralized organizations that kind of work still, right?
So implicit in Nick and Elena's explanation of DAOs is that it is on chain. And I come from I guess watching the scaling debates in Bitcoin land back in the day. And what happened there was the governance mechanism there without a DAO or without anything on chain was that it all just happened on GitHub, and it happened on the Bitcoin mailing list. And so I come from a perspective of saying, okay, DAOs can be as simple as just forming some sort of social consensus layer without needing it to be on chain necessarily, so that it doesn't you don't need to incur gas fees in order to decide how you're going to go with a quorum decision. So with that, I've been thinking a lot about how we could move a lot of these things more into, I guess, meat space, because at the end of the day, it really is coming up with innovative ways with checks and balances built in to make important decisions that people are really passionate about and that people really care about.
Right. Earlier, you we did touch on governance tokens, because right now there are DAOs that have issued governance tokens, and there are some that don't. Maybe they don't need it, but yeah, are governance tokens necessary for DAOs or the progression of a DAO?
I think governance tokens are really useful for people to speculate on that platform, right? With Gitcoin, for example, and there was another one. It was the Bankless DAO, but they're really not necessary.
Okay.
Really,
why not?
Because again, I come from the angle that you should be able to create structures without having a token, right? You don't necessarily need to expend gas fees and create a transaction in order to create a vote. What you can do is, I mean, it could be as simple as going on GitHub. You have a BIP, a BIP system, Bitcoin improvement process, and then you could have people vote on it, and you say, okay, if majority votes and likes this comment, this proposal in this span of time, then we're going to go with this decision, and if not, then we're going to go with that decision. And so there's many ways to explore that.
I think this is a really interesting part of the discussion. I think there's I believe in tokens. I've spent years researching token economics, so I'm somewhat biased, but I think there's a real power in the incentive alignment that can be generated from these things. So they allow you to build almost like a decentralized payroll mechanism, doing the kind of bounty type work that you were talking about, Elena. And for me, they're the tools for decentralization. So I think what you're talking about, Chjango, is the kind of a slightly broader concept, or I can sort of like digital organizations or decentralized organizations, not quite DAOs, but this kind of distributed group of people who all collaborate on something. And it depends how decentralized you want to be. If you want to actually create a decentralized organization, the tokens allow you to broaden out the set of control to on-chain, decisions. So if you want to upgrade to new smart contracts, if you want to send money to places, if you want to actually do on-chain activity, then those tokens act as a kind of diffusion force of the power around those things. So it really depends on how decentralized you want to be, and if you're using them properly. I think a lot of DAOs don't need them at the moment because they're not using them properly. And so there's a very small number of DAOs that are actually using them effectively at the moment. But I do believe they're an important component of effectively decentralizing things like management keys away from a multi-sig, for example. I think that's ultimately where that'll trend to.
Yeah, and on that, I mean, we are speaking on a DeFi summit panel, and I think that with the explosion of the decentralized financial kind of markets over the last year, we're talking about DAOs in relation to DeFi, and I think it's the tokens and the incentive structures of these tokens that have also added value and driven the growth of this space. So that's definitely interesting. What do we think is missing right now in the DAO like infrastructure market?
I mean, yeah, okay, I'll pick that one up because that's been pretty much what we do. I mean, we've tried to pick out. We're trying to build something like the Office 365 / Google Apps ecosystem for DAOs, right? So and they need that kind of thing: tools for socially coordinating, tools for managing tokens, tools for managing treasuries, managing reputation, payroll, that kind of thing. So they need everything that organizations need, but are under different conditions because you're talking about pseudonymous actors rather than someone who you can stick on your HR books, things like that. So you need appropriate token vesting things. So how do you build trust systems so people can't dump all the tokens and end the DAO? If people are committing to it, how do you make that work? You need the tools for building a market and releasing tokens. So we've built an auction mechanism for starting new tokens off and NFTs. And building a market through liquidity mining. And we think prediction markets are going to be an important part of that as well, as things move towards like futarchy. But perhaps the most importantly is tools for reaching consensus. So a voting system that leads through a kind of chain of decision making that eventually changes smart contracts and does on-chain stuff. So yeah, we're just about getting this stuff out, and we've got the first 5 of these apps done. But yeah, I think we're just finding our feet on what we're necessary. But it's something like what conventional organizations need. They need applications for doing work.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone else want to add to kind of what we need or what's kind of missing at the moment that the DAO and DeFi space need to see?
We also maybe need to talk. So technically, again, so probably the infrastructure is missing, and on a bigger scale, the understanding is missing of what really the DAOs are. Right. So then everyone, when they say DAO, they mean different things. And it's okay because we are in a decentralized space, right? So at the end, I think the one wins that works, right? So and then I'm actually very keen to see which one it will be, right? Right now, the voting is from my understanding, the voting is the one that works still, right? So, but in the future, probably there will be something else. So, and as I said, we are developing our own vision of the DAO, how it should be, but will it be the one? Who knows? Yes. So, and I think this is what we are missing right now, the common understanding. And I'm very keen to see how the space will develop in that sense.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in seeing single sign-on and human readable names coming online. So what Nick touched on lightly earlier is the idea that for quadratic voting to happen in a way that is semi-Sybil resistant, or as Sybil resistant as you can get in the digital era, is the idea that you could have human readable names that are kind of that are somewhat that are hard to obtain. So what you could do with human readable names is that, so with ENS, they have recently launched a single sign-on with your ENS name, right? And something similar could be done with Handshake, but the barrier to entry for that is that you have to purchase these names, and sometimes they're very expensive, or you have to go through an extensive auction process in order to obtain those names. And so what ends up happening is your names become phishing resistant, because nobody can provide the private key that is that you use to sign to prove that you own this name. And so in the future, when this technology is fully mature, what you can do with Nick system, with Handshake names and ENS names, for example, is that you could sign on and like register for an event or vote using that name, and Nick's platform can reasonably believe that you are one person, one vote, as opposed to just this Sybiled account that has no cost of creating that account, and 100 other accounts like it. So I'm really excited for this digital uncensorable immutable identity layer to kind of come to maturation, so that we could have something like a decentralized web really come through.
Right. Yeah. Like Web3
and the usability, probably, the one that we should not sign with a whole bunch of private keys and so on and so forth, and MetaMasks, and
yeah. I mean, in the future, the idea is that in 5 to 10 years from now, we could have an experience that is very similar to, logging into Gmail, for example, but like all the usability of doing that, but at the same time, completely uncensorable and trustless. And like it's way more secure than having to do a 2-step verification with your SMS number. There would be no SMS. That process would be completely abstracted away, and all you have is like a 32-byte key to prove that this is you, and you just have to sign.
Oh, just a chip inside your body.
Right, but so I guess my next question really is well, how far are we away from that? I mean, Elena just touched on how education, it's a lot of kind of everyone kind of not getting on the same page, but really informing and educating people how to interact, just join DAO, even onboard more people onto DAOs, making it easy for them to do that. I mean, so going forward, is decentralization the way to go for most organizations today, like centralized ones? Because you're starting to see you see that with Synthetics, for example. They were a centralized organization before, and then they kind of exited to a DAO. You're starting to see these exit to DAOs as well in DeFi. Is this the way forward?
Well, the whole blowing up, the Bitcoin of our blockchain space, it is a decentralization. This is the reason why we're here. This is my belief, right? And even though inside the space, people might not even believe it. So I just recently talked to COO of DAO Maker. So DAO Maker is just a decentralized autonomous organization maker. And he said to me that he does not believe in decentralization, that the future in decentralized companies. So even people inside the space, they doubt. But I don't have doubt, because we can see the result. The space is blowing up and it's growing. So it's the way to go.
I don't think we'll have a choice. I think if people want to do DeFi, they're going to have to be decentralized, and they're going to need a DAO to do it. I think regulation is going to get very oppressive in the near future, and I think there's going to be a need to be provably incredibly neutral and be run by communities if you want to do this kind of work. So I think they're kind of necessary. But in terms of how close we are, I think we could see a DAO go viral in the next 12 months, and really just be absolutely massive, and people all over the world are talking about it. So I don't think we're far away at all. I think the tools are nearly there.
Yeah, I would agree that all of the tools are already built and in out there in the ether, and so all it is just making it more usable. I mean, I know that's like a really big term, and everybody says that, but at the same time, if you ask a new person to come in and use MetaMask, it's just they're not as confident. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Right.
but at the same time, yeah, like teams moving their keys over to be managed by DAOs and the funds to be managed by DAOs, that is just a regulatory arb that is kind of like the way to go, where everyone's trending to, and so
Yeah, awesome. No, I see what you mean. Like, for sure, it's about making it usable. So we're running out of time. This is our kind of final question. I guess looking kind of ahead in the next 6 months to a year, to wrap up on the topic of are DAOs essential to DeFi? Could each of you kind of like wrap up with why you think DAOs are essential to DeFi, and what you'd like to see in the next 6 months to a year?
Okay. I'll go. Yeah, so I think they're going to be essential to, like I say, to allow you to be able to do decentralized finance. And I think organizations are the building blocks of civilization, and DAOs are going to be completely change the way that we think about coordinating and collaborating globally. So, I mean, DeFi is just financial services without banks. But DAOs allow you to do governance without government, and it doesn't get much bigger than that. So I think we're due a DAO hype wave, and I think we'll get it very soon. I think DAOs are going to be big over the next 6 months.
Awesome.
I think for the same reason, for this decentralization, because decentralized finance, decentralized autonomous organizations, right? So and these are the people that we are, uniting into these organizations, and people like it to be fair, right? So in the DAOs, that's exactly what makes it fair for everyone.
Awesome.
It's so right now I believe that DAOs are more important than ever, and the reason for this need is because we're sort of feeling the heat from regulators on all sides, including the U.S. and China, and them coming down with all the news about regulatory clampdown. But a case study right now is with Uniswap. So Uniswap is going to be setting precedent because okay, so one example is this recent. It was Harvard. It was Harvard and a couple of WEF people who proposed to create a DAO in order to lobby the government, right? Because there's some because the government wants to go after Uniswap, and so what you want to do if you are Uniswap is you want to abstract your team and yourself away from this platform as much as you can. And so DAOs are a really good way to do that, right? And in a way that decentralizes and democratizes control over this thing to the people, so that the people who actually use it are the ones governing it, and the government, can't go to this DAO and try to stop everyone who's using it from using this DAO. So.
Awesome. That's a very nice way to end the panel, and let's wait and watch how it's all going to unfold in the next few months. So thank you all. Thank you, Nick, Chjango, and Elena for joining me on this panel. And yeah,